Good evening, everyone from Abu Dhabi. I'm Dr. Sadia Jamil from Khalifa University of Science and Technology, and I would like to welcome all of you in the 17th episode of Communication Talk. Today, we are going to talk about visual journalism in the digital age. So, if you're really interested to know about how the concept of visual journalism has transformed from the traditional media to the digital age, how are the practical sides and implications are changing. The visual journalism practice, what are the theoretical dimensions of it, what are ethical dilemmas faced by visual journalists, and how it has been changing news media operation and structures, and what will be the future of visual journalism. All you can get in this episode of Communication Talk. Now, today we have three distinguished experts who will be sharing their insights into this topic. We have Dr. William Philcock from Arizona State University. He is emeritus faculty over there and director of global initiative, Walter Congaito School of Journalism and Mass Communication. We have head of news from Equator TV, Mr. Shakil Ahmed, and then we have editor of Africa Brief, Mr. Winston. A very warm welcome to all of you. Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
Good morning. Thank you for
good evening.
All right.
Well, it's good evening here.
All right. So good evening to you. So very briefly, I shall start with Dr. William. Dr. William, can you enlighten all of us about the concept of visual journalism, how it advances the knowledge of journalism in digital age?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Am I allowed to share my screen? I have a picture or two because we're talking about picture things, and I'd love to show you a picture. So do I have screen sharing privileges? Do you know?
I think so, maybe. Yeah. We would love to see those photos.
All right, let's try it. We'll see. I'm just going to show you a couple of pictures to kind of get us started. So my background, by the way, is professional television news. And this is a picture from London from several years ago in front of the royal courts. So you can see, you know, journalists, much like they are in Bangladesh or in Abu Dhabi or here in the United States, driven by pictures. And of course, the device that we all have in our hands, the phone, has greatly increased what we mean when we talk about visual journalism. So I come to it from a perspective of professional background, and the challenge for us as scholars is to try to understand how the professional matches with the theoretical, like how people, what they're actually doing on their phones and what kind of theories are about that. We have what's called a visual village now across the world. I can speak with my daughter who happens to actually, live in South Asia. I can speak to my son who lives in the middle of America. We can speak on Zoom from Africa, from Abu Dhabi, from South Asia. It's quite a miracle. But all of this technology has had an impact on the storytelling process. We have what's called a tsunami of images. We did a study a few years ago called Visual Gatekeeping. It's an academic article, but I think most people could understand it. And we've interviewed journalists from around the world to try to understand what's happened to the tradition of gatekeeping, which is where someone decides in a newsroom, this goes in the newspaper, or it doesn't go in the newspaper, or this goes on the TV broadcast or on the social media platform. But one of the things that we kept hearing when we did this research is we have so many images, we don't know what to do with them. So this old traditional theoretical concept called gatekeeping, where only one person decided what went in and went out, is thrown out the window because now everybody can be a gatekeeper. I can create my own YouTube channel. And so that's had an impact. And so last slide or two I'll show, we actually created a model of what's called the visual news stream, where traditionally stories would enter in and they would be shared on traditional platforms like BBC or CNN or Guardian or whatever newspaper, the Gulf Times, or on a TV channel. But now society, individuals can enter into this news stream. If an event happened outside my window today, tragically, if a plane crashed out there in the field, I could instantly go on with my phone and become a participant, not a bona fide journalist, but a citizen journalist. So this model accounts for all of that. The other thing that I will share, because this also is a topic about ethics, is we've done a lot of research on how journalists portray the coverage of war and then more recently, how they cover refugees. So one of the articles we wrote was about how images of death and dying are perceived, in different cultures and different societies. We enter into what I call a kind of sacred space where we have to be careful as journalists, and we have to especially study this as researchers to help inform practitioners about the dangers of too many images and what we do with those images. And with that, I'll stop talking, but those are just some opening thoughts I have, because I think very much what we want to talk about today are both practical things, what happens in a television newsroom or a newspaper or on social media platforms, but then also what happens in the theoretical laboratory as we try to understand this. Because ultimately, as global citizens, we have to be aware of the shift. It's called a pictorial turn. I have an Instagram account. My son has Snapchat, TikTok. Everything is now visual, even before. And that's a miracle because I don't speak Bangla. I don't speak a lot of the rich African languages. I don't speak Arabic. But I might, and thank you for speaking in English today. But even if we didn't have language of words, pictures could communicate a lot to us. So those are just some. Those are some opening thoughts.
So we agree that there is a tsunami of images. We are hit by a tsunami of images because we are in a digital age. So from a practical perspective, my question to Shakil and then to also Mr. Winston is that how do you think that reality is distorted by visual journalism? Is there any reality distortion because of visual journalism? How professional journalists handle that? Yes, Shakil.
Country like a Bangladesh. We are the, I would say, the highest Facebook user in the world. Maybe at the Dhaka, the city where I live, is the highest Facebook user, and you can, imagine, some 15 crore people has the mobile phone themselves, and the number is huge. But the thing is, whether you want to believe on this content or not, whether this information you are carrying by a person using the digital media, what a journalist do? They do, the other Bill was talking like, we are the gatekeepers. What journalists do? Journalists actually collect information from various point of view. They check the information and then they set it free for the viewer or for the listener. But what we are doing now in the social media, I myself also do the same, my kids do the same. But what all of we are doing is expressing our personal view using the social media. And we are expressing ourselves by visually. That is more attractive, but end of the day, we are actually transmitting our very personal view. And think about if millions of people is striking on your social media, digital media platform, giving you everyone's view on the social media platform, and it becomes a very, very confusing world for everybody. And that's happening in Bangladesh, of course, because everybody is a teacher, everybody know everything, so everybody wants to say everything. So they talk on the social media, and there are many of the influencer, and also there are some political move who are also using Facebook. Like I should say, my neighboring country, like Myanmar. I'll be short. In Myanmar, what happened there? When the Rohingya people, they've been forced to leave Myanmar to Bangladesh. 1 year before, there is a series of hate campaign against those Rohingya people, ethnic people. These people are bad. These people are, they are not civilized people. And when they literally get out of the country after a brutal killing, people had a very less impact in their mind, because using the social media, you can easily destruct people's mind and people can think this is truth, which may not be truth.
All right. Mr. Miston, I will come back to you now. How do you see the reality distortion and visual journalism in African context? Would you like to enlighten us, please?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I think in the first place, I should agree with my colleagues, the previous speakers, that, for example, we have a tsunami of digital media flooding, especially the social media, and also the previous speaker from Bangladesh, where he said almost everyone wants to become a journalist. It's almost the same thing in Africa. Maybe before I dwell much, I give you a picture of what's really happening in Africa. I should about ethics, okay? Ethics are simply the agreements, okay? These are understandings between among journalists that, okay, this is what we are supposed to do. They are not, unfortunately, they are not enforced by the police, by the government. It's just understandings between us as journalists. But essentially, if you look at these ethics, if you go to Bangladesh, United States, Africa, and other countries, essentially what they are calling for truth and accuracy, okay, in dissemination of information, independency, okay, talk of responsibility in terms of dissemination of news or pictures, words, or whatever. Objectivity, where as journalists we need not put our views into news, okay, and also impartiality, not taking sides, okay, and finally maybe fair play, where we give equal opportunity to everyone. Now, coming to your question, we are also witnessing some serious problems in Africa, because almost everyone wants to become a journalist, okay? Even, I'm really surprised, because journalism, it's like, it has become a profession that anybody can jump into. I've always argued with others to say, this is something that people cannot do with lawyers, for example, with law, okay? Nobody can wake up and say, I'll start practicing law, okay? People have to go through some process. And nobody can wake up one day to say, I want to be a doctor, I'll be practicing medicine. But when it comes to journalism, it's very unfortunate, because almost everyone wants to become a journalist. So we've seen in the recent past, especially in the wake of social media, WhatsApp, Facebook, we've seen an avalanche, a tsunami of digital media. It could be pictures, it could be videos. But unfortunately, one thing with all this is that they are not verified. They don't conform to the ethics of journalism.
All right, thank you. So we agree that journalists construct reality. And when they construct reality, there might be some impact. Not, I would say definitely there may be some impact, either positive or negative. My question is to William. William, how do you see the theoretical impact of visual journalism? How it advances our knowledge of journalistic practice? Would you like to enlighten us on that question?
Well, building on what my good colleagues have said, just a quick thing. Yes, everybody wants to be a journalist, but the challenge is today, how do you decide, and how does the audience know who is a bona fide journalist versus just a citizen journalist? Not that there's anything wrong with citizen journalists, but you're talking about an element of trust. And that's a very strong ethical principle. You build a relationship of trust between the audience. I mean, the audience that Sakil, he has a news director for a television channel there in Bangladesh. She's very cognizant of having a strong relationship of trust, whether it's the presenters or whether it's the reporters. Winston made an interesting comment just a minute ago, and it made me remind me of, if you think about doctors or lawyers in the United States, as in most countries, you can't practice medicine unless you have a license. You've been to medical school, you pass a medical board. I can't practice law unless I pass the law board. You don't have to have a license to be a journalist in America, thank heavens, or in many countries of the world, because freedom of the press, freedom of speech allows that to happen. But what has happened in this rush for visualization and in the ease of technology, don't forget technology is driving all of this. It's so easy for me to create a TV story on my phone. A 12-year-old teenager can do that. They've never been to a journalism school in their life. They've never even had a journalism class, yet they're creating stories. There's nothing wrong with that. The power of storytelling has been with us since the ages of cavemen and women when they sat around campfires and told stories. Well, today we have electronic campfires. It's a TV screen or a phone screen. But what Winston was saying about, licensing, what's important is that the audience understands, and that's where media literacy comes in. The audience understands the difference between, okay, that's just some citizen's opinion. No, that's a bona fide news source. Now, branding takes part in this process, and visualization is a big part of branding. BBC, CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post. You have global brands, Reuters, and then brands in, continents and countries that are also unique and special. But people have loyalty towards brands. The challenge is the shifting audience. Today, you have young people getting their news not on traditional platforms, but on TikTok. So if they see it on TikTok, they believe it. Well, so smartly, traditional brands, legacy brands, are going to social media. The Wall Street Journal has a TikTok account. The Wall Street Journal has a Snapchat account because they know that's where the future of the audience is. But I think we have to make sure that we understand the important role of media literacy. And the United States does not do a good job about this. We don't teach media literacy in high schools nearly the way we should. Other countries are much better at that. But I think that's really important so the audience can be educated about what is a journalist, what is not a journalist, so they can trust it. My grandma may have a recipe to cure COVID. She may say, well, to do COVID, you take a bunch of tea and you put a bunch of stuff on your face or wild herbs or something. That may be true. But COVID is not going to get cured by a bunch of grandma recipes around the world. It's going to be cured by people taking a vaccine, I believe. And so that's the difference. You have to understand that people need to understand the difference between, grandma, and I'll still trust grandma and her recipes to, how to cure the common cold. But I also want to trust medicine because I trust science. And that's the challenge. And also the last thing I'll share, there's a very much an artistic experience that happens in visual journalism. People are artists. They want to create on their phones. They want to take pictures. They want to add music. And you don't want to destroy that creativity. And journalism has not yet figured out the boundaries, and that's where theory can come in, between storytelling that is storytelling to create light versus storytelling to create heat. Sometimes we talk about in doing an interview, I'm going to be a tough interview, so I'm going to, like Oprah Winfrey just did, with Meghan and Harry, which is a global story. But if you just produce a story that creates heat, that's not good. You have to want to create light, knowledge, and understanding. Sorry if I got a little off base there, but I'm just trying to share that, we have this tension between the audience who want to be a part of this and should be a part of storytelling. They have from the dawn of time. But then also letting the audience recognize you have to trust the source. You have to trust the journalist. Otherwise, society will fall apart.
All right, William, I will move to one more question. Theoretically, when we talk about the ethics of journalism, for example, we have like global standards for ethical journalism and definitely some global standard to practice visual journalism. But if we look at country-specific cases, what is ethically acceptable in visuals could be different. For example, if you go to an Islamic society, visuals that are considered ethical in West maybe may not be acceptable in an Islamic society or a conservative society. So how do you see how theory can address those ethical dilemmas in visual journalism?
Oh, great.
Do we have any normative theory for that? Any yardstick?
Yeah, there are a lot of people who've done work on professional codes of ethics. So there are global codes of ethics, not, the United Nations tried to do this in the 1970s. There is no license to be a journalist, thank heavens. But there are ethical codes or societal norms. For instance, depictions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Yes.
That was very controversial 20 years ago. I have a wonderful scholar friend who works in Pakistan, has done a lot of research on cartoons. And so that's not quite news, but it's the same point. But I think it's important to understand there are codes of ethics from Society of Professional Journalists in the United States. Individual newsrooms have codes of ethics, but the ultimate thing is the individual reporters' codes of ethics. I may work for the New York Times, they have an ethical code, but if I'm out covering a war and I see some horrific slaughtering of children or a refugee crisis, what am I going to do with those pictures? Because the world may have an appetite for those pictures. I have to be the first frontline gatekeeper. I have to say, yeah, that story is going to be really big and it'll go global, but I've offended somebody if I take a picture of an innocent child who has just been mangled or something horrific has happened to them. So that's where the standards of ethical theory and judgment come in. But as you look across different countries and cultures and newsrooms, you'll find different codes of ethics. So a deeper understanding, just like there's a medical code of ethics, their Hippocratic oath. If I'm going to be a doctor, I have to say I'm going to do no harm. And in the United States, or in other countries, there are codes of ethics. And many of them have fundamental principles like minimize harm, look for alternatives. Is there a different way to do it? A great Swedish sociologist named Sissela Bach, she taught at Harvard. She's written a lot of books about ethical theory. And she says, when you confront an ethical dilemma, the first thing you do is consult your conscience. You look inside and say, yeah, it's a great story, but should that be told? Or how should it be told? And that's the second part of her theory. Then you look for alternatives. Is there a different way to say there was a slaughter and included the death of many young children, but we're not going to show you those pictures. We'll tell you about it in words. And then the last thing, which is so important in today's age, is when you make a decision from your conscience and then you've looked for other, alternatives, you have a public ethical dialogue with the audience and tell them on your social media platform, tell them on your website, this is why we chose to show the Rohingya refugees in this way. Or this is why we chose not to do that. You may find this story in other news organizations, but we're not doing it that way. And that's some of the theory that's being developed around ethics and visualization.
Thank you, William. I should move to Shakil and William for a more operational side of visual journalist. How do you see that visual journalism has transformed the news operation or structure in the digital age?
All right, it is like a tsunami that you were telling in the very beginning of the show. I mean, yes, I can tell you my story of my television. What we wanted to do is not just giving people news or information, but we wanted to connect our people, and we wanted to create a two-way television. To do that, I mean, now in the digital area, I'm talking like 11 years back when we started our journey with my television. Then we thought we wanted to make a two-way television, connecting people who will be part of the news and the part of the show every time. Wherever it is happening, the news, then our professional team is there, and also from the field, people are also connecting and participating live on our television. That was our plan, and we couldn't make it. First we had to all over the country. I'm telling you some 10 years back story. All over the country, we had to cable link the district level to get those visuals and information from the people. And for the last 7-8 years, it's easy through our technology, through mobile phone and through 4G and 3G. We are having enormous responses from the people who are already on live on the information they are disseminating through social media. So now what we do, as we know, in the social media, people are already been buzzed. Already people are being affected with this news. So this is a prime source of our everyday news. We always have we have to keep an extra and very good eye on the social media, and all of the visuals is coming through this digital area, digital media. And from there, they always tell you the half truth, of course. And then as a journalist, we make that full, and that is become journalistic work at the moment. This is one thing. And may I also just keep one comment from William, what you talked about. All right, no, let me just jump in. Let's not go back. Yeah.
All right. Winston,
am I clear enough?
Yes, I will move to Winston. Winston, how do you see visual journalism transforming news media operation and structures in Africa? And how much do you see news organizations are ready to pursue visual journalism?
Yeah, thanks so much. I think this transformation, if I may call it that way, where we are now seeing full broad division between traditional media and traditional media here, I mean professional journalism and citizen journalism who are just interested in maybe just sharing content. We are seeing that there's some kind of you can't really tell now who is who because
I think his connection we lost his connection. Yeah, should I?
All right, I shall move to my next question. It's about the future of visual journalism. William, how do you see the future of visual journalism in American context and more broadly in international context?
First of all, I think those divisions are going to disappear. So we often say, there's country, there are no such thing as boundaries. The boundaries, Winston's back. He may be back now. Should we jump back to Winston?
All right, I shall come back to Winston. You can carry on, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so right, some technical problem. So what I was saying is that we are now seeing a new ethical, a rise of new ethical issues. Okay, now this is because there's a rise of new image technology, and we are seeing images from both the professional and citizen journalists. They are flooding especially the social media, and this is done through cell phones and shared on the internet. Now, what is happening is that this convergence of easy capture, okay, easy transmission, and easy manipulation of pictures and other digital media is sort of waking up or giving pressure to the traditional media. So what I would say is the traditional media should not sleep. I'm glad to hear from William that some media companies in the United States, for example, are going to platforms like TikTok. This is the same thing that I think should be happening in Africa, especially. We've seen it, of course, recently in Africa because, for example, because of COVID-19, and there were some kind of restrictions for journalists to work physically. We've seen a rise of social media, traditional media also starting to use social media. So basically, that's what I would say. I would say there is a convergence of social media or citizen journalism and professional media. But all in all, the traditional media, the established media, should still bear in mind that they have responsibility to maintain media ethics, which essentially stipulates that everything that we publish should be truthful, should be accurate, should be independent from another political or another affiliation. We should always be responsible. We should always be objective. We should always be impartial. We should always make sure that we observe fair play, despite the fact that there's a wave, there's a tsunami of digital media, especially on social media.
All right, I will back to William. I asked you the question, how do you see the future of visual journalism? William.
Thanks, Sadia. Yes, thank you. I think it's very exciting. It's very bright. I feel very positive. But one of the reasons I know that is because of what we're doing right now. here's somebody from Africa, from Bangladesh, from the Middle East, from America, all talking about a very important topic and doing it in real time on Facebook. That's a miracle. And it's important that the discussion continues. Communication is the beginning of understanding. There's a phrase that's at the Missouri School of Journalism, where I have my PhD, that says, you know, journalism should be the schoolmasters of the people. We're like teachers, and we teach people how to use the technology, but we also need to teach people how to understand the stories they're watching. Winston was correct. We've just come out of a political campaign in the United States, the most vicious in our history. But some of the things that happen in the US will then happen in your countries or in your cultures. And one of those things is technically, I can't do it, but smart people can. I can manipulate Barack Obama to say things he never said. I can make Donald Trump say things he never said through some very careful, editing techniques. So we really, really need quality journalists to help the audience navigate this visual space. It's exciting. It's like going into a movie theater with surround sound, or my son on his video game platform. Yeah, it's very exciting to be in there, but the journalist has to help the audience understand that is not real. This is real. This is reality. And if we fail to do that, we failed society. And things like global pandemics or political upheavals or economic crises can get exasperated because people will manipulate for, I can use the word, evil reasons, to destroy our cultures, our countries, our religions, our belief systems. So we have to be very wise about that. Wise shall be the people that bear the light of journalism. And so the journalists have to have lots of wisdom. I have one last picture I'd like to share with you, if I might, because I think it illustrates that very well. If I can share my screen again, I think I can. You'll see this because it's an example of this idea of wisdom. You can see this picture right here. So this is a picture of Belgrade, Yugoslavia. This is a bridge between old Belgrade and new Belgrade. The Balkans is a part of the world where the refugee crisis has been, where the wars of Yugoslavia happened. But this saying, wise shall be the bearers of light, that also comes from one of my places I've taught at the United States, the Missouri School of Journalism. Journalists have to be very wise if they're bearing up this. Another school that I taught at was Brigham Young University, and their idea there was that you enter to learn things, but you go forth to serve the people. So journalists have to be willing to be servant leaders to people. And then I'm at the Walter Cronkite School most recently, and this last picture over on the left-hand side, this is a picture of our building, and we have an art display in the building that's actually created out of the windows. You can see there on the left-hand side of your screen. That's 6 stories of windows of glass. And the idea is that light comes into the building to educate the students, and then they can also shine their light out about truth, about visualizations, about the important things that are going to help the citizens of society make the kinds of decisions they need to make. So that's what I think about when I think about the future of journalism and visual journalism and ethical journalism.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Shakil, can you please share your insights about the future of visual journalism, maybe in Bangladesh? How do you see that? And more broadly in South Asia?
Yeah, I think, I'm just, allow me a few more moments. Like what I think is, all the years we did all the professional visuals by like our journalists, but what we're watching, what watching the Facebook or social media is actually real video, So we were using those created video. Now we are on the age of real video of people themselves. So people are more exposed, and they are creating their own video on the social media. So people are more connected with their face and their thoughts in the whole industry. So my point is, so when people are really, really connected, you cannot make them disjoint. They are giving information to this huge industry. You cannot disjoint them. And professional journalists stands there. They will give you accurate and trustworthy information, but it will not enough. it will not enough. Right? The number of professional journalists is so big, and the people themselves are so high, and so interesting video they are creating, because they are creating all the, real videos. So real video is more exciting than created video, though that is, in terms of quality, you can tell them those are trash or something, but those are interesting to watch. So people will be watching those videos like in YouTube. So what I'm going to say is, it is all a crowd-sourced media. And crowd-sourced media, if you can find a system or technological solution to make those crowd-sourced information more trustworthy, that is the future. And there, we are the professional journalists will be there, and if you can get this information from millions of the people, and through a trustworthy channel, it presents in front of you, and that's the future of the journalism, in my belief. And that we're going to do in Bangladesh, to do a pilot. Of course, many of our friends and colleagues who are enlightened journalists, they're trying to do things like that. And you never know, Bangladesh will be home ground for this kind of new journalism. Yeah.
All right. And finally, I will come to Winston. Winston, how do you see future of visual journalism within African context? Winston, can you hear me? Winston, can you hear me? Are you there?
Professor Jamil, I'm not sure he's on. I don't see him on our screen anymore.
Yeah. All right. So, before I take a leave, before I wrap off, let me share my very quick, brief overview about the ethical perspective or the normative theory for visual journalism. So we all agree that visuals are the construction of reality by journalists, and that can have an impact, positive or negative. Therefore, we need a yardstick, a measurement of do's and don'ts. And when we have a need for do's and don'ts, that means we need to measure the ethical sustainability of communication. We need to understand ethical sustainability of the media practice. But what has changed in the digital age from a theoretical perspective is the concept of ethics. It's a concept of public interest, the concept of social responsibility that has redefined in the digital age. And why it has changed? Because the difference between producer, distributor, and consumer has blurred. And when the concept of producer, distributor, and consumer has blurred, that means we need a new yardstick to understand how the concept of social responsibility negotiates itself within different contexts of the world, how we can apply do's and don'ts for all those people who are just part of one game: producer, distributor, and consumer. So it is something that is ethical communication that calls for a framework beyond traditional journalistic practice, beyond traditional concept of media ethics. And this is all about the normative theory of journalism in digital age that we can definitely apply on visual journalism. Am I correct in my analysis, Dr. William, before I wrap up?
I think absolutely. In fact, I've just taken some notes and put it on and put it in the chat, because I think it's brilliant what you're talking about. It's a great paper. And what our colleague Shaquille was sharing about, this is eye-opening, wonderful, to figure out a way for, the kinds of things for crowdsourcing to have some kind of ethical element into that. These are great things, and there's great.
I think this is something my forthcoming special issue on ethical sustainability. Sustainability is something that I'm obsessed these days. So sustainability comes in my every paper. So
yeah, that's wonderful. We'll have to connect, and the three of us and four of us can figure out how to write something together. This is wonderful. This is really very breathtaking. And you're right, they are converged. The producer, the consumer, the distributor, it's so converged. And the audience, as Sakil was saying, the audience is it's everywhere, and they're smart. They're smart, and they're young. The teenagers are leading the pack, and they're excited to do it, but they don't have wisdom. And that's the role, I think, that we need to figure out is how to help them not lose their enthusiasm, but figure out how to have wisdom in what they do, because storytelling is powerful, but it can be dangerous. It can be dangerous under the wrong circumstances. It can harm cultures, it can harm religions, it can harm individuals. And that's why it's so important that we get it right.
Thank you.
Academics
So
and professionals
I
working
shall,
together.
so given we are running short of time, I shall wrap off today's episode of Communication Talk. We did the episode 17 of Communication Talk with Dr. William Silcock, who is the Emeritus Faculty at Arizona State University. We had Shakil Ahmed, who is Head of News at Ekatar TV, Bangladesh. And we had Editor of Africa Brief, Mr. Winston. Thank you, all of you. I wish you all a very healthy and safe stay at your places. I hope to see you all in person very soon. And before we leave, take care. Bye.
Yes.